The numbers on James Patterson's screen turned red one by one, like blood drops spreading across white cloth. Each red indicator meant another server failing, another system crashing, another piece of his life's work crumbling before his eyes. He stood frozen in his corner office on the 47th floor, watching 12 years of building TechFlow Industries disappear in real time. "Sir, we've lost another data center," his assistant Rachel called from the doorway, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's 4 now. The investors are calling every minute." James didn't turn around. He couldn't. Outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkled with evening lights, but inside his world was going dark. The launch of FlowStream, their revolutionary business management platform, was supposed to happen in 6 hours. 5,000 companies were signed up to go live simultaneously at midnight. Instead, every system that connected to their main servers was failing in a cascade of digital destruction. "How many customers have we lost?" he asked, his voice hoarse. 1,700 and counting. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. James finally turned around and Rachel took a step back at the look on his face. At 34, he'd built TechFlow from a garage startup into a billion-dollar company. He'd survived economic downturns, competitor attacks, and investor revolts. But this was different. This wasn't something he could fight with determination or money. This was watching everything he'd built turn to dust while he stood helpless. "Get everyone in the main conference room," he said. "Every programmer, every systems analyst, everyone." Rachel nodded and hurried away. James walked to his desk and picked up a framed photo of himself and his team celebrating their first $1 million contract. They all looked so young, so sure that hard work would always be enough. He set the photo down and headed for what might be the last meeting he'd ever hold as CEO of TechFlow Industries. The conference room buzzed with nervous energy. 30 of his best people sat around the long table, laptops open, coffee cups scattered everywhere. These were the minds that had built FlowStream, the platform that was supposed to revolutionize how businesses manage their operations. Now they all looked like passengers on a sinking ship. "Talk to me," James said as he took his seat at the head of the table. "What are we dealing with?" Sarah Kim, his head of systems, pulled up a network diagram on the main screen. Red X marks covered most of it. It started with the primary authentication servers at 4:17 p.m. We thought it was a routine overload, but when we tried to redirect traffic to the backup systems, they started failing too. "One by one," added Mike Torres from the security team. "Like dominoes falling. Each system failure triggers problems in connected systems." James felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "What about the isolated backup servers? The ones that aren't networked?" "That's the weird part," Sarah said, her fingers flying over her keyboard. "Even our standalone systems are showing errors. It's like the code itself is corrupted, but we've checked everything multiple times." "Could it be an attack?" James asked. Mike shook his head. "No signs of intrusion. No malware, no unauthorized access. This looks like a cascading system failure, but I've never seen anything like it." James stood and walked to the windows overlooking the main work floor. Dozens of employees were still at their desks even though it was past 8 p.m., all trying to save their company. In the corner, he noticed the cleaning crew starting their evening rounds. Even they looked worried, probably wondering if they'd still have jobs tomorrow. "Sir?" Rachel's voice broke through his thoughts. "Channel 7 News is calling. They heard about the system failures. They want a statement." "Tell them no comment for now," James said without turning around. He couldn't face cameras when he didn't even understand what was happening to his own company. "What about the midnight launch?" asked Tom Bradley, the marketing director. "We've got press releases ready to go out to every major tech publication. The countdown is live on our website." James closed his eyes. The midnight launch had been planned for 18 months. They'd spent $12 million on marketing alone. Tomorrow morning, TechFlow was supposed to be the biggest story in business technology. Instead, they'd be a cautionary tale about putting all your eggs in one digital basket. "Cancel it," he said quietly. The room fell silent except for the hum of laptop fans and the distant sounds of the city below. "James," Sarah said carefully, "what if we can't fix this? I mean, what if whatever's wrong is deeper than we think?" He turned back to face his team. These people had believed in him, had worked 60-hour weeks to build something incredible. They deserved honesty. "Then we'll lose everything," he said. "The contracts, the investors, probably the company itself. But we're not giving up yet. We have 6 hours until midnight. 6 hours to figure this out and save 12 years of work." He looked around the room at the faces of his employees. Some were determined, others looked scared, but none of them were ready to quit. That was something at least. I need ideas, James continued. Crazy ideas, simple ideas, any ideas. What have we missed? What haven't we tried? For the next hour they threw out suggestions. Reboot everything from scratch. Call in outside consultants. Blame hackers and ask for more time. Nothing stuck. Every solution they'd tried had failed and time was running out. At 9:30 p.m., James's phone buzzed with a text from his biggest investor. Saw the news reports. Meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. to discuss your replacement. He showed the message to Rachel, who winced. It's really that bad? Worse, James said. If we can't fix this tonight, there won't be a TechFlow Industries tomorrow. Outside in the hallway, he heard the sound of a vacuum cleaner and someone humming softly. Life going on as normal while his world ended. He envied whoever that was humming while they worked, not knowing that by morning they might be cleaning offices for a company that no longer existed. James looked back at his team, still hunched over their computers, still trying to save the unsavable. He'd built this company to prove that technology could make people's lives better, that smart systems could solve real problems. Now those same systems were destroying everything he'd worked for. The red numbers on the screens kept climbing. More servers failing. More customers leaving. More of his dream turning to ashes. And somewhere in the building, someone was still humming while they cleaned, blissfully unaware that they were witnessing the end of everything James Patterson had ever cared about. By 10 p.m. the conference room looked like a war zone. Empty pizza boxes and coffee cups covered every surface. Sarah had drawn network diagrams on 3 white boards, all covered in red markers showing failed connections. The maintenance staff had quietly emptied the trash and refilled the coffee pot twice, the only signs that the outside world still existed. James paced behind his team, watching lines of code scroll past on their screens. He'd learned to program in college, but the systems they'd built were far beyond anything he could troubleshoot himself. He felt useless, like a general watching his army fight a battle he didn't understand. Any luck with the backup authentication servers? He asked Sarah for the 5th time in an hour. They're corrupted too, she said without looking up. Whatever happened to the primary system spread to everything connected to it, even systems that should have been isolated. That's impossible, said Mike from across the table. Isolated means isolated. There's no pathway for corruption to spread. Well, it happened anyway, Sarah snapped, then immediately looked apologetic. Sorry? I'm just frustrated. James understood. They were all running on adrenaline and caffeine, trying to solve a puzzle that seemed to have no solution. He'd called in favors from every contact in the tech industry. 3 different consulting firms had remote access to their systems, all working frantically to find the problem. None of them had found anything. His phone rang. Another investor. James, what the hell is going on over there? The voice of Robert Chin, his second largest backer, filled the quiet room through the speakerphone. I'm getting calls from reporters asking about TechFlow's massive system failure. We're working on it, Robert. My team is. Your team better work fast. I've got pension funds that invested based on tonight's launch. If this goes sideways, lawsuits are the least of your worries. The line went dead. James looked around the room at his exhausted employees. They'd been at this for 6 hours with nothing to show for it. Maybe we should call it, Tom suggested quietly. Postpone the launch, give ourselves a week to figure this out. With what money? James asked. We spent everything on marketing and infrastructure for tonight. If we delay, we lose the customers and can't pay the bills. So what do we do? James didn't have an answer. He walked back to the windows looking down at the city lights. Somewhere out there, 5,000 business owners were planning to switch to FlowStream at midnight. They'd restructured their companies, trained their employees, and trusted TechFlow to make their lives easier. In 2 hours, they'd all realized they'd made a terrible mistake. Behind him, he heard Rachel's phone ringing again. More bad news, probably. Sir? Rachel appeared at his elbow. That was security downstairs. There's a problem with one of the cleaning crew. Apparently, their son is here and won't leave. Their son? Tommy Williams. His mother works for the cleaning company. Security says he's just sitting in the lobby, but he won't go home. They asked if we should call the police. James rubbed his temples. The last thing he needed was a family drama in his lobby. No police. I'll handle it. He took the elevator down to the main lobby, grateful for 30 seconds away from the crisis upstairs. The lobby was empty except for a security guard and a teenager sitting in one of the leather chairs by the windows. The kid couldn't be more than 16, wearing jeans and a t-shirt with a backpack at his feet. You Tommy? James asked. The boy looked up. He had intelligent brown eyes and his mother's bone structure, though James realized he'd never actually met his mother. He just assumed she looked like her son. Yes, sir. I'm waiting for my mom. Security says you won't leave. Tommy straightened up in his chair. My mom's working late because of all the emergency stuff happening upstairs. I told her I'd wait. I'm not causing any trouble. James studied the kid. There was something familiar about his confidence, the way he met James's eyes without backing down. What emergency stuff? The computer problems. Everyone's been running around all night. My mom said you guys are trying to fix something really important. Your mother talks about our business problems? Tommy shrugged. She worries about people. When she cleans your offices, she can tell when folks are stressed. She said you've been working crazy hours for weeks. James felt a strange warmth at the idea that someone had noticed his stress, had cared enough to worry about him. What's your mom's name? Amanda Williams. She's been cleaning this building for 3 years. And you're just going to sit here all night? If that's how long it takes. Tommy picked up his backpack and unzipped it, pulling out a tablet that looked like it had seen better days. I brought homework. James was about to leave when he noticed what was on the kid's screen. Lines of code, complex programming that looked surprisingly sophisticated for a child. What's that you're working on? Tommy glanced at his tablet, then back at James. Just a project. My mom has a small business on the side making custom jewelry. I'm building her a website with inventory management and customer tracking. James stepped closer, reading over Tommy's shoulder. The code was clean, efficient, and used several advanced techniques that most adults wouldn't know. Where did you learn to program like this? YouTube mostly. Some online courses. The library has good internet. This is impressive work for someone your age. How old are you, Tommy? 10, Tommy said with pride. I'll be 11 next month. James felt his eyebrows shoot up. 10 years old and programming at this level? Tommy, this is incredible. Your mom works really hard. I want to help her quit her second job so she can focus on nursing school. Nursing school? She's studying to be an RN. Night classes at the community college. She wants to help people, but... Tommy gestured around the expensive lobby. This pays better than most hospital jobs. James felt something shift in his chest. Here was a kid who understood sacrifice, who programmed complex systems just to help his mother's small business. Meanwhile, upstairs, 30 experienced programmers couldn't solve one corrupted system. Tommy, James said slowly, how much do you know about server architecture and database management? The boy's eyes lit up. Quite a bit. I've been studying distributed systems and cloud infrastructure. Why? James made a decision that probably violated several company policies and employment laws. Want to see a real programming challenge? Tommy's eyes widened as the elevator climbed toward the 47th floor. You're really going to let me look at your systems? Desperate times, James said, though he was already second-guessing himself. What was he doing bringing a 10-year-old into a multi-million-dollar crisis? But something about Tommy's quiet confidence reminded him that genius didn't come with age requirements. The conference room fell silent when James walked in with Tommy. 30 exhausted professionals looked up from their screens, and James could see the question in their eyes. Really? A child? Everyone, this is Tommy Williams, James announced. He's going to take a look at our problems. Sarah blinked at him. James, he's just a kid. A kid who programs better than most college graduates, James interrupted. Tommy, show them what you were building for your mother. Tommy pulled out his tablet and connected to the conference room's main screen. His jewelry inventory system appeared, and despite everything, several people leaned forward to look. The interface was clean and intuitive, the code visible behind it elegant and efficient. This is impressive, Mike admitted. You really built this yourself? At 10 years old? Nobody taught you to program like this? Sarah asked, her tone filled with amazement. My mom helped me learn to think through problems step by step, Tommy said, his young voice growing stronger as he talked about something he loved. I started learning because my mom needed help with her business, but then I got interested in how big systems work. How do you make something that can handle thousands of users without breaking? That's exactly what we're trying to figure out, Sarah said, her tone warming to the bright child in front of her. Tommy, what we're dealing with is a cascading failure across multiple server clusters. Every system that connects to our main authentication servers is failing in sequence. That's exactly what we're trying to figure out, Sarah said, her tone warming. Tommy, what we're dealing with is a cascading failure across multiple server clusters. Every system that connects to our main authentication servers is failing in sequence. Tommy studied the network diagram on the whiteboard. Can you show me the actual error logs? For the next 20 minutes, Tommy absorbed information with the intensity that only a truly gifted child could demonstrate. He asked smart questions, made notes with careful 10-year-old handwriting, and traced connection pathways with his small finger. The room gradually grew quieter as seasoned professionals realized they were watching something extraordinary. This might sound simple, Tommy said finally, his young voice cutting through the adult tension. But have you checked if all your computers agree on what time it is? Sarah frowned. Time sync? That's pretty basic, Tommy. All our servers are synced to atomic time. Yeah, but what if they're not? Tommy said, his childlike directness cutting through adult assumptions. What if something happened to your time server? If your security systems think it's Tuesday and your database thinks it's Wednesday, everything would start failing in weird ways. Mike's fingers flew over his keyboard. Time sync shows, wait. He looked up with a confused expression. This can't be right. According to this, our main time server thinks it's January 1st, 1970. The Unix epoch, Tommy said matter-of-factly as if every 10-year-old knew about computer time systems. That's what computers think time zero is. Something reset your time server to the beginning of time. Sarah was already pulling up more logs. If the authentication tokens are time-stamped, and the time server is reporting 1970. Every token looks like it expired 50 years ago, Tommy finished. So the system rejects everything and starts failing. The room erupted as everyone began checking their own systems for time-related errors. James watched Tommy in amazement. In 20 minutes, this 16-year-old had identified the root cause of a problem that had stumped 30 professionals for 8 hours. How did you see that? James asked. Tommy shrugged. I ran into something similar building my mom's site. I was testing on an old computer that had the wrong date and nothing worked. Once I figured that out, I always check time sync first when weird stuff happens. But why would our time server reset itself? Could be hardware failure, power surge, corrupted firmware, Tommy said. But fixing it should be pretty straightforward. Reset the time server, then restart all the dependent systems in the right order. Sarah was already working. Resetting time server, now. Tommy, what order should we restart the systems? Tommy studied the network diagram again. Authentication first, then user management, then the database connections, then everything else. Like building a pyramid foundation first. James's phone buzzed with a message from his investor. Heard you're letting a kid fix your systems. Are you insane? Word traveled fast, apparently. But as James watched his team working with new hope in their eyes, following Tommy's methodical approach to bringing the systems back online, he didn't care what anyone thought. Authentication servers coming online, Sarah reported. Green lights across the board. User management is responding, added Mike. Database connections establishing. We're getting handshakes. One by one, the red indicators on their screens turned green. System after system came back to life like lights returning after a power outage. The room filled with quiet cheers and the sound of people calling customers to report that FlowStream would launch on schedule after all. James found himself standing next to Tommy, both of them watching the resurrection of 12 years of work. Tommy, I don't know how to thank you. It wasn't that hard once you figured out where to look, Tommy said. Your systems are really well designed. They just needed someone to ask the right question. Where did you learn to ask the right questions? Tommy was quiet for a moment. My mom mostly. She taught me that when something's not working, you don't just try harder. You step back and ask what you might be missing. James thought about all the hours his team had spent trying to force solutions instead of looking for the simple answer that was right in front of them. Your mother sounds like a smart woman. She's the smartest person I know, Tommy said with obvious pride. She works 2 jobs and goes to school and she still has time to help me with my projects. She says education is the only thing nobody can take away from you. I'd like to meet her. As if summoned by his words, the conference room door opened and a woman appeared, looking worried and slightly out of breath. She was beautiful in a natural way that made James's breath catch warm brown skin, intelligent dark eyes, and an expression of concern that was entirely focused on her son. Tommy? Security said you were up here. I told you to wait in the lobby. Mom, it's okay. I was helping with the computer problems. She looked around the room at all the professional faces, then at James, clearly trying to understand what her 16-year-old was doing in the middle of a corporate crisis. Mrs. Williams, James said, stepping forward. I'm James Patterson, the CEO. Your son just saved my company. Amanda Williams looked around the conference room again, taking in the scattered coffee cups, the whiteboards covered in technical diagrams, and the 30 tired faces all focused on her and Tommy. She was still wearing her cleaning uniform, navy blue polo shirt and pants with Capital Cleaning Services embroidered on the pocket, and James realized she'd probably been working in the building all night while they fought their crisis upstairs. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice carrying a slight edge of concern. "Tommy wasn't supposed to bother anyone. I told him to wait downstairs." "He didn't bother us," James said quickly. "He solved a problem that we'd been working on for 8 hours." Amanda's eyes moved to her son, and James saw something pass between them, a combination of pride and worry that spoke of a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. "What kind of problem?" she asked. Tommy jumped in before James could answer. "Their time server got corrupted, which made all their authentication systems think security tokens were expired, so everything started failing in cascade. I just suggested they check time synchronization first." Amanda nodded, as if teenage boys explaining complex system failures was perfectly normal. "Like when our neighbor's cable box started showing the wrong channels because the satellite dish was pointing at the wrong satellite?" "Exactly," Tommy said with a grin. "Same principle, one wrong setting that makes everything else stop working." James watched this exchange with fascination. Most parents would have been lost after time server, but Amanda followed the logic easily and translated it into terms that made sense. He was beginning to understand where Tommy had learned to think clearly about complex problems. "Mrs. Williams," James said, "would you mind if I arranged some special tutoring opportunities for Tommy? He's clearly gifted, and there are advanced programs designed for children with his abilities." Amanda's expression immediately became guarded. "That's very kind, but Tommy is only 10. He needs to be a child first, student second." "It would be age appropriate," James said quickly. "Weekend enrichment programs, maybe some mentorship with our junior developers. Nothing that would interfere with his childhood or regular schooling." "We'll think about it," Amanda said in a tone that clearly meant no. "Right now we should get home. It's a school night and Tommy needs his sleep." James watched her put a protective hand on Tommy's small shoulder, and he realized he'd made a mistake. He'd jumped straight to offering solutions without understanding the situation. In his world, opportunity was always good news. In hers, apparently, it might be something to be careful about, especially when it involved her 10-year-old son. "Of course," he said. "Tommy, thank you again. You really did save us tonight." As mother and son headed for the door, James found himself calling out, "Mrs. Williams? If you change your mind about the internship, or if there's anything else we can do to thank you." She paused and looked back at him. "Tommy did what anyone would do. He saw people who needed help and he helped. You don't owe us anything." After they left, the conference room felt strangely empty despite being full of people. James's team was busy calling customers and preparing for the midnight launch, but his mind kept drifting to the woman in the cleaning uniform who'd looked at him like he was missing something important. "She's protective," Sarah observed, appearing at his elbow with a fresh cup of coffee. "Wouldn't you be? Some CEO wants to hire your teenage son after one conversation." "Fair point. But she seemed like more than just protective. Like she's had experience with people making promises they don't keep." James thought about that as he watched the final preparations for Flowstream's launch. By 11:45 p.m., all systems were green. By midnight, 5,000 companies would be running their operations on TechFlow's platform. Tommy Williams had made it all possible, and his mother had walked away like it was no big deal. The launch went perfectly. Customer after customer logged in successfully, their data transferred seamlessly, their employees adapting to the new system without problems. By 2 a.m., James was finally able to call it a success and send his exhausted team home. But instead of celebrating, he found himself taking the elevator down to the lobby. The cleaning crew was finishing up, and he could see Amanda Williams emptying trash cans on the main floor. She moved efficiently but not hurriedly, taking care to replace liners properly and wipe down surfaces. He watched her work for a few minutes, struck by the thoroughness of her attention to detail. She wasn't just emptying trash, she was maintaining an environment that thousands of people worked in every day. It was the same kind of systematic thinking Tommy had shown upstairs. "Mrs. Williams?" He approached carefully, not wanting to startle her. She looked up from a recycling bin. "Mr. Patterson, shouldn't you be celebrating? I heard the launch went well." "It did, thanks to Tommy." "How did you know?" "People talk when they're happy. Different energy in the building." She tied off a trash bag and moved to the next office. "Congratulations. Can I ask you something?" She paused, clearly tired but polite. "Sure. Why didn't you want Tommy to take the internship?" Amanda was quiet for a long moment, studying his face as if trying to decide how honest to be. Because in my experience, when people want to help Tommy, they're usually trying to help themselves. His teachers want him to make their school look good. His friends want him to do their homework. Even his father. She stopped herself, shook her head, and continued cleaning. I'm not his father, James said quietly. No, but you're rich and powerful, and Tommy is smart and useful. In my world, that combination usually means Tommy ends up disappointed. What if I meant it? What if I really wanted to help him develop his talent? Amanda looked at him directly then, and James felt the full force of her intelligence and experience. Then you'd start by getting to know him as a person, not just as a solution to your problems. You'd understand what he wants, not just what you think he needs. And you'd respect that he already has a family who loves him exactly as he is. She gathered her supplies and moved toward the next section of offices, leaving James standing alone among the recycling bins. He'd been dismissed politely but firmly, and he realized he deserved it. He'd met Tommy and Amanda less than 4 hours ago, and he'd already tried to reorganize their lives around what he thought was best for them. But as he watched Amanda work her way through the floor, maintaining other people's workspaces with the same care she probably brought to everything else in her life, James found himself wanting to know more about the woman who'd raised such an remarkable son. Not because Tommy was useful to his company, but because Amanda herself was unlike anyone he'd ever met. He just had to figure out how to prove that to her. Over the next week, James found himself paying attention to details he'd never noticed before. The building was cleaner than he'd realized, not just surface clean, but thoughtfully maintained. Someone had arranged the magazines in the lobby by date. The coffee stations on each floor were always stocked and organized. The plants by the windows were healthy and well watered. Amanda Williams, he realized, approached her work the same way Tommy approached programming, with systematic thinking and genuine care for the outcome. Wednesday evening, James stayed late again, but this time by choice. At 7 p.m., he heard the familiar sound of the cleaning crew arriving and took the elevator down to the lobby. Amanda was there with 2 other people, all checking their supply carts and talking quietly about which floors they'd handle. Mrs. Williams, he said, approaching carefully, could I speak with you for a moment? She looked up with that same guarded expression he was becoming familiar with. Is something wrong with the cleaning? No, everything's perfect. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about. Amanda told her co-workers she'd catch up with them and turned to face James. What can I help you with, Mr. Patterson? I owe you an apology. Last week, I offered Tommy an internship without knowing anything about your family or what you might want. That was presumptuous. Yes, it was. Her directness caught him off guard, but he appreciated it. I'd like to start over if that's okay. Maybe get to know you and Tommy as people, not just as solutions to my problems. Amanda studied his face for a long moment. Why? Because your son saved my company and I handled thanking him badly. And because... James hesitated, then decided on honesty. Because I've been thinking about what you said about getting to know Tommy as a person. I realized I don't get to know many people as people anymore. Everyone wants something from me or has something to sell me or needs me to make a decision. It gets lonely. Something shifted in Amanda's expression. Not warming, exactly, but a recognition that they might be having a real conversation. What did you have in mind? She asked. I don't know. Maybe I could buy you and Tommy dinner? Somewhere you pick, where you'd be comfortable. Why would you want to do that? James thought about all the truthful answers because he was curious about them, because he admired how she'd raised Tommy, because he found himself thinking about her more than was probably appropriate. Instead, he went with the safest truth. Because in 8 years of running this company, no one has ever told me I was handling something wrong as clearly as you did. I need more people in my life who will be honest with me. Amanda almost smiled. Most people don't like honesty that much. Most people don't almost lose their company because they couldn't see a simple solution right in front of them. This time she did smile, just a little. Tommy said you guys spent 8 hours trying to fix something that took him 20 minutes to diagnose. Your son is smarter than my entire IT department. My son learned to think clearly because he had to. When it's just you and your mom is working 2 jobs while going to school, you learn to solve problems instead of complaining about them. James heard something in her voice, not self-pity, but acknowledgement of hard choices and difficult circumstances. It sounds like you've done an amazing job raising him. We've raised each other, Amanda said. Tommy's been my partner in this since he was old enough to understand that life requires teamwork. Where's his father? Amanda's expression hardened slightly. Not in the picture. His choice. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're better off without someone who doesn't want to be there. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, surrounded by the quiet bustle of the office building transitioning from day to night shift. James realized this was the longest conversation he'd had with someone who wasn't asking him for something in months. "So," Amanda said finally, "dinner? If you're willing." Tommy gets out of school at 3:30 on Fridays. "There's a diner on 5th Street called Rosie's that we go to sometimes. Nothing fancy, but the food is good and Tommy likes their pie. Friday at 4? We'll be there." As Amanda rejoined her co-workers and headed for the elevators, James realized he was looking forward to Friday more than he'd looked forward to anything in a long time. Not because of business, not because of profit margins or market share, but because he was curious about a woman who cleaned his building and raised a genius son while studying to be a nurse. Friday arrived with unusual slowness. James caught himself checking the clock repeatedly and changing clothes twice before settling on jeans and a casual shirt, the most normal he'd looked in years. Rosie's diner was exactly what he'd expected. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floors, and the kind of comfortable worn-in feeling that came from decades of serving good food to working families. Tommy and Amanda were already there, sitting in a corner booth. Tommy was working on homework while Amanda read a nursing textbook, both of them comfortable in the everyday rhythm of shared space and individual focus. "Mr. Patterson," Tommy looked up with a grin. "Mom said you wanted to have dinner." "James," he corrected, sliding into the booth across from them. "And yes, I wanted to thank you properly for saving my company." "You already thanked me." "Not well enough." The waitress came over, an older woman with kind eyes who obviously knew Amanda and Tommy well. "The usual for you too? And what can I get for your friend?" James looked at the menu, overwhelmed by choices he hadn't had to make in years. In his world, assistants ordered his meals and restaurants knew his preferences before he arrived. "What's good here?" he asked. "Everything," Tommy said. "But the meatloaf is amazing and the apple pie is the best in the city." "Meatloaf it is." As they waited for their food, James found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't experienced in years. Tommy told him about school, about a programming competition he was entering, about his plans to study computer science in college. Amanda talked about her nursing classes, about how different it was to learn about caring for people instead of systems. "What made you want to be a nurse?" James asked. "I like helping people," Amanda said simply. "And it's stable work. Good benefits, decent pay, something Tommy and I can count on." "You don't sound passionate about it." Amanda raised an eyebrow. "Passion is a luxury I can't afford. I need work that will support my family and use my brain. Nursing does both." "But if you could do anything?" She was quiet for a moment, glancing at Tommy who was absorbed in explaining programming concepts using sugar packets as visual aids. "I'd like to run my own business someday," she said finally. "Something that helps people organize their lives better. I'm good at seeing how systems could work more efficiently. Like what Tommy does with programming but for people instead of computers?" "Exactly." Amanda smiled, and James realized it was the first completely unguarded expression he'd seen from her. "I see families struggling to manage work and school and activities, and I think about how much easier their lives could be with better systems. That's a great idea. It's just a dream. Right now, I need to focus on practical things." James wanted to argue with her about dreams versus practicality, but he remembered her warning about getting to know them as people first. Instead, he listened as Tommy excitedly described his latest programming project, and watched Amanda's face as she listened to her son with complete attention and obvious pride. By the time they finished dinner and Tommy's pie, James understood why Amanda had been protective. They had something special together, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared goals. Any outsider would need to prove they could add to that dynamic rather than disrupting it. As they walked out of the diner together, James realized he wanted very much to be worthy of inclusion in their lives. Not because of what they could do for him, but because of who they were when no one was watching. Smart, kind, and unafraid of hard work. He was beginning to understand that saving his company had been the easy part. Earning Amanda's trust would be much more challenging. The following Monday, James called Tommy's school and asked to speak with the principal. After 15 minutes of explaining who he was and why he was calling, he managed to set up a meeting to discuss scholarship opportunities for exceptional students. He also contacted 3 different universities known for their computer science programs and inquired about early admission processes for gifted high school students. Then he stopped himself. He was doing it again, making plans for Tommy's future without asking what Tommy wanted or what Amanda thought was best. The urge to fix problems with money and connections was strong, but her words kept echoing. "You'd start by getting to know him as a person. Instead, James found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, taking long walks through the city during lunch breaks. He discovered coffee shops and bookstores, small businesses where owners knew their customers' names, places where Amanda and Tommy probably spent their free time. He was trying to understand their world instead of assuming they'd want to join his. Wednesday evening, he was reviewing quarterly reports when Rachel knocked on his office door. "The cleaning crew is here," she said. "Mrs. Williams asked if she could speak with you when you have a moment." James's pulse quickened, though he tried to keep his expression neutral. "Send her up." Amanda appeared in his doorway 5 minutes later, still in her work uniform but carrying herself with the quiet confidence he was learning to recognize as her signature trait. "Mr. Patterson James?" she corrected herself. "Do you have a few minutes?" "Of course. Please sit down." He gestured to the chairs in front of his desk, then thought better of it and moved to the small seating area by his windows. Less formal, more like a conversation between equals. Amanda sat on the edge of the couch, clearly not entirely comfortable but willing to be there. "I wanted to talk to you about Tommy." James felt his stomach drop. Had he somehow overstepped already? "Is everything okay?" "More than okay. But he's been different since last Friday. Happy but also excited about possibilities. He keeps talking about college programs and internships and career paths. Things we've never really discussed because they seem so far out of reach." "Is that bad?" Amanda was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Tommy is 16. He's smart, but he's also still figuring out who he wants to be. I worry about him getting his hopes up about things that might not work out." "What kind of things?" "Expensive colleges. Competitive programs. The kind of opportunities that require connections and resources we don't have." James began to understand. "You think I'm putting ideas in his head about a life you can't provide for him? Are you?" The directness of her question caught him off guard, as it always did. "I don't know. Maybe. I see his talent and I want him to have chances to develop it. But you're right, I was thinking about what I could offer him, not about what that might mean for your family." Amanda nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "I appreciate your honesty. Can I ask you something? What are you afraid of, really?" She looked out his windows at the city lights below. When Tommy was 7, a teacher promised him he could join the advanced math program. Tommy was so excited he studied extra hard for weeks, even skipped recess to practice problems. When the time came, they said the program was full and maybe next year. Tommy cried for 3 days. "I'm not a teacher making empty promises." "No, but you're powerful and successful, and Tommy looks up to that. He's only 10, James. If you make promises you can't keep, or if you lose interest when helping him becomes inconvenient, he'll remember that disappointment forever. Children don't understand adult complications, they just know when adults let them down." James felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders. "What if I told you I don't make promises lightly?" "I'd say that's easy to claim and hard to prove." "Fair enough." James leaned back in his chair, thinking. "What would prove it to you?" Amanda looked surprised by the question. "I don't know. I guess, consistency? Showing up when you say you will? Caring about Tommy as a person, not just as a talented kid who might be useful to you?" "I can do that." "Can you? Even when the excitement wears off and Tommy is just a regular 10-year-old who sometimes forgets his homework and wants to play video games instead of programming?" James thought about his own childhood, the pressure to be exceptional, the fear of disappointing adults who saw him as special. "Yes," he said quietly. "Especially then. Tommy should get to be a kid first." Something shifted in Amanda's expression. Not trust, exactly, but a willingness to consider the possibility of trust. "There's something else," she said. "Tommy asked me if he could participate in some of the mentorship activities you mentioned. Maybe Saturday morning sessions with your team." "What did you tell him?" "That it was something we could consider, but that we'd need to discuss expectations and boundaries first." "With you?" James felt a surge of excitement that he tried to keep off his face. "What kind of boundaries?" "School and childhood come first, always. He's 10 years old, he needs to play, make friends his own age, and not feel pressure to be a genius all the time. If any special programs make him feel different or isolated from other kids, they stop immediately." "Agreed. He participates as a learner, not as a consultant. Adults shouldn't be depending on a child to solve their problems, even if he's capable of it." "Of course. And if this doesn't work out, if you decide Tommy isn't what you expected, you tell us directly instead of just fading away. Children deserve honest conversations about changes, even when they're difficult." James met her eyes. "I promise." "Don't promise," Amanda said firmly. "Just do it." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of understanding settling between them. James realized this conversation wasn't really about Tommy at all, it was about Amanda learning whether James was someone she could trust with her son's dreams. "There's one more thing," he said. "I've been thinking about what you said at dinner, about wanting to help families organize their lives better." Amanda's expression became guarded again. "What about it?" TechFlow has been talking about expanding into personal productivity software. Systems that help families manage schedules, finances, household tasks. We have the technical expertise, but we don't really understand what families need. And you do. You understand how real families actually live, what their challenges are, what would make their lives easier. That's expertise we can't buy or develop internally. Amanda stared at him. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm suggesting we might be able to help each other. You could finish nursing school with some financial security, and we could learn from someone who actually understands our potential customers." "As what? A consultant?" "However you'd want to structure it. Part-time while you're in school, then we could talk about something more permanent if it works out for both of us." Amanda was quiet for a long time, and James could almost see her weighing possibilities against risks, dreams against practical realities. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "That's all I ask." As Amanda stood to leave, James realized he'd managed to have a conversation about the future without making promises he might not be able to keep or assumptions about what was best for her family. It felt like progress. "Amanda?" he called as she reached the door. She turned back. "Thank you for trusting me enough to have this conversation." She smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. "Don't make me regret it, James." After she left, James sat in his office looking out at the city and thinking about consistency, reliability, and the difference between helping someone and trying to control their life. He was learning that earning Amanda's trust would require more than good intentions, it would require proving that he understood the difference between what he wanted to give and what she actually needed. Tommy started his mentorship program the following Saturday, spending 3 hours each weekend learning from Sarah and other team members. James made sure the sessions were structured like fun learning experiences rather than work, with plenty of breaks and age-appropriate challenges. But James found himself looking forward to the end of each day, when Amanda arrived for her evening shift. Their conversation started small: how Tommy was enjoying his Saturday sessions, whether the activities were too advanced or just right for a 10-year-old. Gradually, they expanded into longer discussions about everything from nursing school to business philosophy to the best places to find quiet study spots in the city. "You know," Amanda said one evening as they stood in the lobby talking, "I never thought I'd be having career advice conversations with a CEO." "You know," James replied, "I never thought I'd be getting career advice from someone in a cleaning uniform. But you've given me better insights into business management than most of my consultants." It was true. Amanda saw systems everywhere: how the building's cleaning schedule could be optimized, why the coffee stations ran out of supplies at predictable times, how employee workflow patterns revealed stress points in the organization. Her perspective was practical and human-centered in ways that most business analysis missed. "Have you thought any more about the consulting idea?" James asked. "Every day," Amanda admitted. "But I keep coming back to the same question: what if I'm not good at it? What if I understand my own situation but can't translate that to other families? What if you are good at it? What if you're exactly what families need?" Amanda smiled. "You're very good at seeing potential in people. I'm very good at recognizing talent when I see it. There's a difference." 3 weeks into Tommy's internship, James suggested they have another dinner, this time at a nicer restaurant. Amanda agreed, though she insisted on meeting there rather than having James pick them up. The restaurant was upscale but not intimidating, the kind of place where James usually conducted business dinners, but with softer lighting and less urgency. Tommy was fascinated by the menu, asking the waiter detailed questions about ingredients and preparation methods. "He's never seen food described in paragraphs before," Amanda explained with amusement. "I'm learning about flavor profiles," Tommy said seriously. "If you can understand the logic of how ingredients work together, cooking is just another kind of programming." James laughed. "Everything is programming to you, isn't it?" "Pretty much. Mom says I see the world as a series of problems that need elegant solutions." "Is that wrong?" Amanda asked. "Not wrong," James said. "Just interesting. Most people see problems as obstacles. You two see them as puzzles to solve. What do you see them as?" Tommy asked. James thought about it. "Opportunities, usually. But that's because I have resources to throw at problems until they go away. You two have to be smarter than that. Resources aren't always the answer," Amanda said. Sometimes they just mask the real problem instead of solving it. Is that aimed at me? It's aimed at the general tendency of successful people to think money fixes everything. James considered this as they ate. In his world, most problems could indeed be solved with enough money, connections, or influence. But Amanda and Tommy had solved his company's crisis with clear thinking, not resources. They'd built their life together through careful planning and mutual support, not through buying their way out of difficulties. Can I ask you something personal? James said to Amanda. You can ask. What happened with Tommy's father? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Amanda glanced at Tommy, who nodded encouragingly. Clearly they'd discussed this before. We were young, she said simply. I was 19, he was 21. We thought we were ready to be a family, but when Tommy was born and life got complicated, he decided he wasn't ready after all. He wanted the idea of being a father, but not the daily reality of it. Does he still see Tommy? Christmas cards and birthday money, Tommy said matter-of-factly. But no actual visits. I used to want him to come around more, but I realized I was wanting him to be someone he isn't. James felt a familiar tightness in his chest. His own father had been present but emotionally distant, more interested in James's achievements than in James himself. At least Tommy had one parent who was fully invested in knowing him as a person. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be, Amanda said. It taught us both that people show you who they are through their actions, not their words. We've built a good life without him. The best life, Tommy added. Mom is my favorite person to hang out with. James watched Amanda's face light up at her son's words, and felt a strange longing for that kind of uncomplicated affection. When had someone last enjoyed his company just for the sake of being with him? What about you? Amanda asked. Family? Parents in Florida, retired. Sister in California with 2 kids I see twice a year. The usual scattered family situation. Close to any of them? James thought about his family relationships cordial, respectful, but not particularly warm. Not really. We're all very busy with our own lives. That sounds lonely, Tommy observed. It is, sometimes. The admission surprised James even as he said it. He wasn't used to acknowledging loneliness, much less talking about it over dinner. But something about Amanda and Tommy's easy honesty made him want to be equally real with them. Is that why you work so much? Amanda asked gently. Probably. Work, I understand. People are more complicated. Most people, Tommy said with a grin. But we're pretty straightforward. Yes, you are. I like that about you. As they walked out of the restaurant together, James realized this was the most relaxed he'd felt in months. No agenda, no business goals, just good food and better conversation with people who seemed to genuinely enjoy his company. James? Amanda said as they reached the sidewalk. Thank you for dinner. And for being patient with my questions and concerns about Tommy. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove I meant what I said. You're doing a good job so far. It was a small compliment, but coming from Amanda, it felt like a significant victory. James was learning that her approval had to be earned through consistency and authenticity, not charm or grand gestures. As he watched them walk toward the bus stop together, still talking and laughing about something Tommy had said, James found himself wanting to be part of that easy warmth they shared. Not to possess it or control it, but to contribute to it in whatever way they'd allow. For the first time in years, he was more interested in what he could give to a relationship than what he might get from it. Victoria Chin arrived on a Tuesday morning like a force of nature, designer clothes, expensive luggage, and the kind of confident energy that had once swept James off his feet. She'd been in Singapore for 6 months setting up TechFlow's Asian operations, and her return to the main office created an immediate stir. James? She strode into his office without knocking, something only she would dare to do. I heard about the system crisis, and about your young hero. Very dramatic. Victoria. James stood to greet her, accepting her kiss on the cheek while trying to gauge her mood. How was Singapore? Profitable. We signed 12 major contracts and established partnerships with 3 government agencies. But I'm more interested in hearing about this teenager who saved the company. Victoria settled into the chair across from his desk, crossing her legs and studying him with the calculating expression he remembered well. They'd dated for 2 years before her promotion to international operations, and the relationship had ended amicably when her career took her overseas. Or so he'd thought. Tommy Williams, James said. 16 years old, self-taught programmer. He identified a time synchronization error that our entire IT department had missed. And you've hired him? Part-time internship. He's brilliant. I'm sure he is. What about his family? Are they the grateful type or the demanding type? James felt a flare of irritation at the question. They're the decent type. His mother works in the building and she's... He paused, unsure how to finish that sentence without revealing more than he intended. Victoria's eyes sharpened. She's what? Intelligent. Hardworking. She's raising a remarkable son on her own. How admirable. Victoria's tone was neutral, but James caught the subtle edge. And you've gotten to know her how, exactly? We've had dinner a few times. To thank them properly for what Tommy did. Dinner. Victoria leaned back in her chair. How many times is a few times? Why does it matter? Because I know you, James. You don't have dinner with random employees' families unless there's something more going on. James found himself in the uncomfortable position of defending relationships that he wasn't entirely sure how to define himself. Amanda, Tommy's mother, is interesting to talk to. She has insights into business management that most consultants lack. Amanda. Victoria repeated the name as if testing its weight. And what does Amanda do when she's not offering business insights? She's in nursing school. She also works as a janitor in this building. Victoria's expression shifted to something James couldn't quite read. You're having dinner with the janitor. I'm having dinner with a woman who's putting herself through nursing school while raising a genius son and working 2 jobs. The fact that one of those jobs is cleaning our building is irrelevant. Is it? Victoria stood and walked to the windows, looking down at the city below. James, you're a CEO of a billion-dollar company. You can't afford to be naive about how relationships like this look to other people. What's that supposed to mean? Victoria turned back to face him. It means that rumors about the CEO and the cleaning lady will be all over the building within a week. It means your board of directors will start questioning your judgment. It means the press will have a field day if they get wind of it. James felt his temper rising. There's nothing inappropriate about my friendship with Amanda and Tommy. Friendship. Victoria's smile was knowing. Is that what we're calling it? Yes, that's what we're calling it because that's what it is. James? Victoria's voice became gentler, more concerned. I've been away for 6 months and I come back to find you personally involved with an employee's family, offering internships to teenagers, and having dinner with women who clean your office. This isn't like you. Maybe the person you knew 6 months ago wasn't the real me. Victoria studied his face carefully. Or maybe you're going through something that's affecting your judgment. When was the last time you took a vacation? When was the last time you had a relationship with someone in your own social circle? I don't need a relationship with someone in my social circle. I need relationships with people who are honest with me. And you think the janitor is honest with you? The dismissive way Victoria said, the janitor, made James realize how different his perspective had become over the past month. A few weeks ago he might have described Amanda the same way. Now, reducing her to her job title felt like missing the point entirely. I think Amanda Williams is one of the most honest people I've ever met, he said carefully. And one of the smartest. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. James? Are you involved with this woman? We're friends. But you'd like to be more than friends. James hesitated, and Victoria pounced on the hesitation. I thought so. She moved closer to his desk. James, listen to me. I care about you and I care about this company. Getting involved with an employee even tangentially is a risk you can't afford to take. What happens when it doesn't work out? What happens when she decides she wants more than you're prepared to give? What happens when the tabloids find out? Nothing is going to happen because there's nothing inappropriate happening. Yet, Victoria said pointedly. But you like her. And she's probably flattered by the attention from someone successful and wealthy. These situations have a way of getting complicated very quickly. James wanted to argue, but he couldn't entirely dismiss Victoria's concerns. He was attracted to Amanda, though he'd been trying not to acknowledge it even to himself. And their lives were undeniably different in ways that could create complications. What are you suggesting? He asked. I'm suggesting you be smart about this. Keep your distance professionally. If you want to help the kid, that's fine, set up a scholarship or something through the company foundation. But don't get personally involved with his mother. And if I don't want to keep my distance? Victoria's expression softened. Then I'm suggesting you think very carefully about what you're doing to her. Do you really think she'll be better off after a relationship with you ends? Do you think her son will be better off? Or are you just thinking about what you want right now? After Victoria left, James sat in his office staring at the city lights and thinking about unintended consequences. He'd been so focused on getting to know Amanda and Tommy as people that he hadn't fully considered Victoria's point about perception and complications. That evening he found himself watching Amanda work with new awareness. She moved through the building with quiet efficiency, greeting the security guards by name, making sure the coffee stations were perfectly stocked for the morning shift. Other employees passed her without acknowledgement, seeing the uniform rather than the person wearing it. What would happen to her if their relationship became office gossip? What would happen to Tommy's internship if people started whispering about his mother and the CEO? James had the power and position to weather almost any scandal, but Amanda and Tommy were vulnerable in ways he was only beginning to understand. When Amanda knocked on his office door at the end of her shift, James felt the weight of Victoria's warnings settling on his shoulders. "How was your first day back with the international team?" Amanda asked, settling into her usual chair by the windows. "Complicated," James said honestly. "Victoria has strong opinions about how I should run my personal life." Amanda's expression became carefully neutral. "Victoria? My business partner. She runs our international operations. We used to date." "Used to?" 2 years ago, before she took the Singapore position. Amanda nodded, and James couldn't tell what she was thinking. "And she has opinions about your personal life because she thinks I'm making poor decisions that could affect the company." "What kind of poor decisions?" James met her eyes, knowing this conversation could change everything between them. "She thinks I'm getting too personally involved with employees' families." Understanding dawned on Amanda's face, followed by something that looked like hurt. "She thinks you're getting too involved with me. She's concerned about appearances. About complications." Amanda was quiet for a long moment, and James could see her processing the implications of what he'd said. When she spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. "Is she right to be concerned?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibilities and risks that neither of them had fully acknowledged until now. James stared at Amanda's question, feeling the weight of honesty that she always demanded from him. "Yes," he said quietly. "She's right to be concerned." Amanda closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with a look of resignation that made James's chest tighten. "I was afraid you were going to say that." "Why afraid?" "Because it changes everything, doesn't it? When feelings get involved, everything gets complicated." They sat in silence for a moment, the truth settling between them like a wall. James realized he'd been naive to think they could continue having dinner together, spending time together, getting to know each other without deeper feelings developing. "Amanda," he started, but she held up a hand. "Let me think for a minute." She stood and walked to the windows, looking down at the city lights as Victoria had done earlier. James watched her shoulders, the careful way she held herself when she was processing difficult information. "James," she said without turning around, "what exactly are we doing here?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I started out wanting to thank you and Tommy properly. Then I wanted to get to know you as people. But somewhere along the way, you started having feelings that complicate everything." "Yes." She turned back to face him. "And Victoria pointed out that those feelings could affect Tommy's internship, my job, your business reputation." "Yes." "She's not wrong, is she?" James wanted to argue, but Amanda was looking at him with that direct honesty that demanded the same in return. "No, she's not wrong." Amanda nodded as if confirming something she'd suspected. "James, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay." "If you met me somewhere else at a coffee shop or through friends, or anywhere that didn't involve my work, would you still be interested in getting to know me?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you interested in me as a person, or are you interested in the story of me? The single mother working her way through school, the dramatic rescue of your company, the feel-good narrative of the CEO and the janitor." James felt like he'd been punched. "That's not fair. Isn't it? You live in a world where people want things from you, where relationships have agendas. How do I know I'm not just another agenda?" "Because you know me better than that." "Do I?" "James, we've known each other for 6 weeks. We've had dinner 3 times and talked in your office maybe a dozen times. What do I really know about who you are when you're not trying to prove something to yourself about being a good person?" The accuracy of her words stung because James wasn't entirely sure he could answer that question himself. How much of his interest in Amanda was genuine attraction to who she was, and how much was attraction to the idea of being with someone real and honest after years of superficial relationships? "I don't know," he said finally. "I thought I did, but you're right, maybe I don't know myself well enough to answer that." Amanda's expression softened slightly. "At least you're honest about it." "What about you?" James asked. "Are you interested in me as a person, or are you interested in what I could do for Tommy's future?" Now it was Amanda's turn to look stung. That's not fair either. Isn't it? You need financial security for Tommy's education, for your own future. How do I know I'm not just another opportunity? They stared at each other across the office, both recognizing the impossible complexity of trying to build something real when their circumstances were so different. We're quite a pair, Amanda said with a bitter laugh, both wondering if the other person has ulterior motives. Maybe that's the problem, James said. Maybe we're thinking too much instead of trusting what we feel. What we feel could hurt Tommy. What we feel could hurt my career, your business, everything we've both worked for. Or what we feel could be worth the risk. Amanda shook her head. Easy for you to say. If this goes wrong, you'll still be a CEO with $1 billion company. I'll be a single mother who lost her job for getting involved with her employer. The reminder of their different positions hit James like cold water. He'd been thinking about their relationship as if they were equals, but they weren't. Not professionally, not financially, not in terms of what they had to lose. You're right, he said. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking about the risks to you. I know you weren't. That's part of the problem. James's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it automatically, then felt his blood run cold. What is it? Amanda asked, seeing his expression. It's from Victoria. She's heard rumors. What kind of rumors? James read the message aloud. Building security mentioned you've been having regular meetings with the cleaning staff. Might want to address that before it gets out of hand. Amanda sat down heavily in her chair. It's already starting. Amanda. No, James. Victoria's right. This was bound to happen. She stood up and moved toward the door. I need to go. Where are you going? Home. To think. To figure out how to protect Tommy from the fallout of my poor judgment. This isn't poor judgment. We haven't done anything wrong. Amanda paused at the door. Haven't we? We've been having dinner together, spending time together, developing feelings for each other, all while pretending it was just friendship. That's not honest, James. That's not the kind of example I want to set for my son. She left without saying goodbye, and James sat alone in his office feeling like he'd mishandled everything. He'd wanted to get to know Amanda and Tommy as people, but he'd ended up creating exactly the kind of complicated situation he'd promised to avoid. The next morning brought a text from Tommy. Mom says I should focus on the internship and not worry about anything else. Did something happen between you guys? James stared at the message, knowing that whatever he said next would affect a 16-year-old boy who'd done nothing wrong except trust the adults in his life to handle their relationships responsibly. He was beginning to realize that good intentions weren't enough when the stakes involved other people's lives and dreams. James spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about Tommy's worried questions and what his answer should be. He could lie and say nothing had happened. He could tell partial truths about business complications. Or he could respect Tommy's intelligence and give him an honest, age-appropriate explanation. Saturday morning, he asked Tommy to stay after his mentorship session for a conversation. Is this about my mom? Tommy asked as soon as they were alone in the conference room, his 10-year-old directness cutting straight to the point. Yes. Are you going to stop letting me come to the Saturday sessions? The question hit James like a physical blow. Tommy, no. Absolutely not. Your learning program has nothing to do with my friendship with your mother. But there is something wrong between you two. James looked at the earnest 10-year-old across from him and made a decision to be as honest as possible. There could be feelings that make our friendship complicated. You mean like how grown-ups sometimes like each other but can't be together because of rules? Something like that, yes. Tommy was quiet for a moment, his young mind processing this with surprising maturity. What are you going to do about it? I don't know yet. What do you think I should do? You're asking a 10-year-old for grown-up advice? I'm asking someone who knows your mother better than anyone else, and who would be affected by whatever decision we make. Tommy swung his legs from the adult-sized chair, looking thoughtful. Can I tell you something about my mom? Of course. She gets really scared when people want to be close to us. Not angry scared, but worried scared. Like she's waiting for them to decide we're too much trouble. Why do you think that is? Because my dad left when things got hard. And because some people are nice to me because they want something from my mom, or nice to my mom because they think I'm like a cool toy or something. James felt a tightness in his chest at the wisdom in Tommy's young voice. Tommy? I'm not saying you're like that, Tommy interrupted with the brutal honesty of childhood. But my mom doesn't know that yet. You have to show her that you like us even when we're not special or helpful. How do I do that? Tommy smiled for the first time since their conversation started. You're a CEO, Mr. Patterson. You're supposed to be good at solving problems. That evening, James found himself knocking on an apartment door in a neighborhood he'd never visited before. Amanda answered, looking surprised and wary. "James? How did you get my address?" "Employee records. I know I should have called first, but I was afraid you wouldn't answer." She stepped aside to let him in, and James got his first look at the home she and Tommy had built together. It was small but carefully organized, with Tommy's programming books sharing shelf space with Amanda's nursing textbooks. Family photos covered one wall, mostly pictures of the two of them at various ages, documenting a relationship built on shared experiences and mutual support. "Nice place," James said, and meant it. "It's small, but it's ours." Amanda gestured for him to sit on the couch. "What are you doing here, James?" "I wanted to talk to you away from the office. Away from my world and yours." "And what did you want to talk about?" James took a deep breath. "I want to quit my job." Amanda stared at him. "What?" "Not permanently. But I want to step back from day-to-day operations and put someone else in charge of managing employees and building policies. That way, there wouldn't be any conflict of interest if we wanted to explore what's between us." "James, that's crazy. You can't restructure your entire company for a relationship that might not even work out." "I'm not restructuring the company. I'm restructuring my role so that you don't have to choose between your job and your personal life." Amanda was quiet for a long moment. "And what if it doesn't work out between us? What if we try dating and realize we're not compatible? You'd have given up control of your company for nothing. Then I'd have learned something important about myself and what I value. And you'd still have your job and your security. You would really do that?" James leaned forward, meeting her eyes. "Amanda, Tommy asked me if I really care about you as a person. The answer is yes. I care about you enough to change my life instead of asking you to risk yours." Tears gathered in Amanda's eyes. "James, I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I'm not asking for any promises. I'm just asking you to think about whether you'd be willing to have dinner with me sometime, not as my employee's mother, not as someone who owes me gratitude for Tommy's internship, but as a woman I'd very much like to get to know better. What about Victoria's concerns? What about appearances and complications? Victoria was right that my position as CEO created problems. So I'm removing that barrier. As for appearances," James smiled. "Amanda, you're intelligent, beautiful, and raising an incredible son while putting yourself through nursing school. Anyone who has a problem with me dating you can explain to me why I should care about their opinion." Amanda laughed through her tears. "You're serious about this?" "I'm serious about you." She reached across the couch and took his hand. "James, you don't have to give up being CEO for me to take you seriously." "Then what do I have to do?" "Just be yourself. Not the CEO version of yourself. Not the version that solves problems with money and power. Just, James. The person who brings me coffee when I'm working late, who listens to Tommy talk about programming for an hour without getting bored, who admits when he doesn't know something. That's all? That's everything." They sat holding hands on her couch, and James realized this was the most natural he'd felt with another person in years. No agenda, no performance, just two people who'd found something real in the middle of complicated circumstances. "So," Amanda said eventually, "about that dinner invitation." "Yes. I know a place that makes amazing meatloaf. And the company is pretty good too." James laughed. "It's a date." 2 years later, James stood in the conference room watching Amanda present the family productivity software that had been inspired by both her insights and Tommy's technical curiosity. The beta version was being tested by 50 families, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Tommy sat beside her, now 12 years old and still the brightest kid James had ever met. While Amanda handled the business presentation, Tommy was ready to answer any technical questions the investors might have about the user interface he'd helped design. Amanda was beautiful in the professional clothes she now wore as TechFlow's Director of Family Systems Development, a position she'd earned through competence and vision, not through any relationship with James. She'd finished nursing school but had chosen to pursue her dream of helping families organize their lives better instead of working in a hospital. "Questions?" Amanda asked the room full of potential investors. An investor in the back row raised her hand. "This system is impressive, but what makes you think families will actually use it?" Amanda smiled and looked at Tommy, who grinned and raised his hand politely. "My mom tested it on our family first," Tommy said with the confidence of a child who'd grown up around adults who respected his ideas. "And she understands that families don't need more technology, they need technology that actually makes their lives easier. Plus, I made sure the interface is simple enough that even my mom can use it." He grinned teasingly at Amanda, who rolled her eyes with affection. After the presentation, as the investors mingled and discussed licensing deals, James found himself standing with Amanda by the windows overlooking the city. "Proud of him?" he asked. "Every day," Amanda said. "He's been accepted to a gifted program at the university for next summer. They want him to take advanced computer science classes. That's incredible. He's only 12. 12 going on 30 sometimes," Amanda laughed. "But we're making sure he has time to just be a kid too. He joined Little League this year. We all earned it." Amanda smiled at him. "This whole crazy year, the crisis, the internship, the job, meeting you. It feels like everything happened for a reason." Maybe it did. James had indeed stepped back from day-to-day operations, focusing instead on long-term strategy and development. Victoria ran the company's operational side, and she grudgingly admitted that his relationship with Amanda had led to one of their most promising new product lines. "James?" Amanda said quietly. "Yes. Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing us, really seeing us instead of just seeing what we could do for you." James took her hand, thinking about all the ways his life had changed since the night his systems crashed and a 16-year-old boy had asked the right question at the right time. "Thank you," he said, "for teaching me the difference between helping people and actually caring about them." "Where do we go from here?" Amanda asked. James looked at Tommy, now surrounded by investors asking about his college plans, then back at the woman who'd changed everything about how he saw success and happiness. "Forward," he said. "Together, if you'll have me." "I'll have you," Amanda said, and kissed him in front of the windows overlooking the city where they'd all found exactly what they hadn't known they were looking for. Outside, the sun set over a city full of possibilities, and inside, three people who'd started as strangers had become a family built on respect, trust, and the kind of love that made everything else possible.